Listeners of the deep below, we welcome you to a new story, and as always, ask you to visit the author's work, as well as visit us on other social media platforms. Welcome to the story. It was early summer in 2008. The housing market had not picked back up yet, and I was among the hordes of house flippers now stuck living in what was supposed to be a short project. I had bought the house on a mortgage I could not afford. Due to unemployment, my job security had decreased to the point of weighing on my mind. Bills remained relentless, despite the downward spiral of the economy. I was depressed, not to the point of complete despair, but close enough to push me into a slump. This is irrelevant, because you need to understand, at least generally, where my mindset was when these events transpired. That first night, the night of the meeting, I was walking home from the local Walmart. It was after work, too late for the bus, and I was slogging a full backpack of groceries through an early Georgia heatwave. The route back to my development was flanked by shallow swamps, so I was more concerned about the mosquitoes than muggers. It had been a particularly miserable day, and I was angry at my job, at myself for putting off shopping, and most of all, at my lack of money and today's world that had stolen my profit. If things could have held on just a little longer, I'd be living in a modest homestead and driving my groceries home in a sleek little car. That's why, when a car pulled up beside me and rolled down the passenger window, I was not alarmed enough to take a close look at the apparent do-gooder. It started with the usual banter. Aren't I afraid of walking the road at night? Don't I know that there could be unsavory characters lurking at the edges of the swamp? Mister, if any character steps in that swamp, they'll get unsavory really fast, I remember saying in an effort to shrug him off. I had not started walking, so the man had to retain a slow roll to stay level with me. He also had to keep glancing at the road ahead to watch for oncoming traffic, which made it impossible to maintain eye contact for more than a few seconds. He found my response amusing and brought the car to a complete stop as a deep, melodic bellow emanated from what felt like the back seat. This was enough to make me take a closer look at him and maybe feel a little suspicious. Is this the part where you pull a gun and ask for my wallet? I asked roughly, stopping with the car, which only seemed to make his green eyes sparkle in amusement. I am a perfect gentleman, he replied as if it were a joke, which made me recoil. Still, He did pull his shirt up and lean forward to expose his waistband and slowly lean over to pop the glove compartment. Could be tucked between the seat and the door. Another short, smooth bark of laughter that did not quite match with the movements of his mouth. Why not help a stranger, just for the hell of it? I eyed him for a long moment, although now I can't quite remember what features he had that seemed so disarming. More words were exchanged, although I'm not quite sure what they were. The next thing I clearly remember is standing in my living room with a man, as he slowly turned about, taking the place in. "This is nice," he remarked at the end of his inspection. "I hope the rest of the house is in such good condition." I was disoriented and felt like I had just woken up from a deep sleep. The more I tried to hold on to the logic and specifics leading up to this moment, the faster they slipped away. A small ball of unease grew rapidly in the pit of my stomach, and my palms began to sweat. My focus was now solely on the man, and for the first time, I was able to consciously notice the peculiarities of his appearance. His eyes were unnaturally bright and glassy, his features blurred and shimmered without definition, and he seemed almost amused at my attempt to seek something more concrete. As I stood there staring, another version of him seemingly slipped off from the original and slunk back into the hole leading to the east wing of the house. The man gave no indication that he was aware of this, as he held my gaze with a warm smile. "So, as you would imagine, I'm looking for a quiet place to call home during my stay in town," he pronounced matter-of-factly, as if we were concluding a conversation. "Would you be interested in renting a room?" At this point, I was flat out trembling and wondering if this whole thing was even real. From the corner of my eye, I could see the doppelganger darting from room to room. "You are not using the east wing, correct?" I would stick to my side of the house, of course. It would not be much of an intrusion. He prompted after a moment, making a small movement with his hand to draw my focus from the doppelganger. You'd have to pay half the mortgage and utilities. It wouldn't be cheap," I muttered, swallowing loudly as a second image slipped off of him and walked out the open front door and into the yard. I could have sworn the door was shut just seconds ago. With the second clone gone, his features snapped into sharper focus, and I could now make out unnaturally high cheekbones, slanted eyes with skin that seemed tight yet deeply wrinkled at the same time, smile lines. The creature, whatever it was, whatever he was, had smile lines. Of course, that's only natural. How much would you estimate roughly for monthly expenses? His eyes crinkled at the end of the sentence. 2,500. I breathed, heart hammering in my chest. Was this some sort of dream before that? I wondered if I had been hit by a car on that road and was still laying there, bleeding out and wishing for a small amount of financial stability before slipping into the great unknown. Maybe I had finally lost it and did walk home, hallucinating and talking to myself the whole way. I also found it strange that I seemed completely unable to deny the man's requests and turn him out. That will be fine. He nodded before drawing in a deep breath. As he did, he seemed to almost vibrate, and two dark shadows merged behind him. The room felt static once more, and my equilibrium was thrown off. I had to take a seat on the sofa, and the man followed suit, crossing one thin leg over his lap as he turned to face me. I knew he must have been taking in the doppelgangers again, now that he was satisfied with his inspection. Once more his form shimmered and flowed, as if his shadow selves were visibly present and tracking his movements, just a fraction of a second too slow to present a complete image. He was studying me, I estimated, pondering my reaction for several long moments before nodding. With great ease, he flourished his wrist and drew a checkbook from his vest, which was crafted from rich fabric that had become so threadbare with age that its paisley pattern was barely visible and began to fill out the top page. In a moment, I was holding a check for 7 grand. The solid feel of the paper in my hand, issued by a bank that I was familiar with, brought me back to reality. 2 months' rent and security deposit. Do we have an agreement? There really wasn't much of a choice. I was already 2 months behind on mortgage and bills were relentless. It was enough to get me caught up. It was the breathing room I so desperately needed. When do you plan on moving in?